Now let's all gather, enjoying the company we share. Our tears will dissolve into thin air. Hey guys, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez. That was my Patreon list. I'm coming at you today with a super long, super scary story. So I will get right into it. Everyone say hello to Dashi, hello Dashi. May she protect us because this is a scary one. I haven't read it in 5 years specifically because of this, called Anansi's Goatman story. Here's my story. Be me, be 16, be black, and have a family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers, and that they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. And my down south cousin suggests that we go out there to camp. And I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the heck out of me. And, we collect food, we kill a pig, some chickens, and bring necessities to camp for a few days. Damn, chickens too. We get to camp, and it's obvious something's a little weird. You know, the air had this weird electric smell, like before a storm, kind of like ozone. And we don't think anything of it, so we unpack and we go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. And all of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes and had a shotgun under the crook of his arm, which is a little concerning to me, but figure where we are, it's not that big of a deal. He says hello, asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. And I tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say that we're camping out. And he tells us we just need to be really careful out here and stick together, because there's a big animal in the woods. And, his son, who's around my age, he asked if he can stay and hang out with us, and Dad says okay. So, and he's making a thing about green text. So we end up playing football, just messing around. There's this white kid that's Tanner, me and my 5 cousins, and then 4 of their friends. So in total, there were 5 girls, 6 boys. We're all between like the ages of 15, 17, and we just end up messing the day away. So we head back to camp and start pulling out some stuff for the campfire. Even though the trailer both had kitchenettes, Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's, and he wants to run back home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. Now, my cousin Rooster says he's going to go too with him since it's about to be dark soon, and one of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark, and they take flashlights, they take the trail toward the Tanner's property, and the rest of us, it's pretty chill. We make some s'mores, we drink a little bit, we kind of mac on the girls, at least the girls that were there that weren't family. And about 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it. And you could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. It's this really nasty, coppery smell, kind of like right after you had a nosebleed and it stopped. And it wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was a nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electric malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or something. So, we search the trailers, nothing's on, and we could all still smell it. And all of a sudden, we hear people booking it down the path towards us. It's Rooster, it's Tanner, and the girl, and they're all coming into the clearing. They're all very out of breath, and they don't even break stride. They run right into the trailer, right by where the fire is, and we all we don't know what's going on, so we all get the fudge out of there, and we go into the trailers and follow them. And they end up calming down, but even Rooster was crying his eyes out at that point. All the while, the fire's guttering lower and lower. So my other cousins say, all right, we'll go outside, we'll get the generator out of the shed between the trailers. And Tanner goes, nope, lock that door, nobody else going outside. You could tell he's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot like they were smoking, and puffy, and his pants are dirty as hell. And they go on to tell it, he goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, and that maybe just in case, just take one of the hunting rifles. And evidently Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days prior. One of their pigs had come up, ripped in half and eaten, and they assumed it was just some cats or coyotes, even though they usually don't mess with live animals. He had gone up, at least not on the farm. He'd gone upstairs, packed his stuff, told his dad, we'll be all right without it, because without the rifle, because coyotes usually do avoid people. So they started walking back toward where we were camping. And then Rooster finally gets his stuff together, and he was shaking a little bit, and The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with just a dumb look on her face, like she was in a trance or something. And he says they'd gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they just started to hear something in the forest, and it was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what it was. And the girl said that she had heard something in the bushes right off the trail. They beamed their flashlights over there, and there was something standing back in the woods. It was a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that that he was, whoever it was scaring the fudge out of him, and stop being an a-hole. And he says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they kept walking, and they start smelling this nasty coppery ozone smell, the same stuff that we were smelling back at the campsite. They said that they just took off in the forest the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest backwards, slightly closer to the path, so they don't see a face. And now they start power walking, and Tanner keeps going and says, I should have taken that freaking rifle. So as they're telling the story, the smell is super strong, and even inside the cabin now, it still is. And they say that after they started walking faster, there's a kind of low gibbering that had started coming from both sides of the woods. And as I started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said that she had flashed her flashlight out in the woods to the side of them and had seen something, doing some very adult self-pleasuring stuff in the woods. And the gibbering just got louder and louder. And when they could see the light out from the campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer because they were freaked out. Now, we were out in the woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or something trying to mess with us, because who does that, especially in the middle of the woods? Now all of a sudden, my other cousin Junior starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or something. And we promptly tell him to, shut the hell up, because we don't need any spooky talk right now. It's spooky enough as it is. But he just keeps going on like he had to get it out about how it's this Goatman and how we're in the woods and blah blah blah. And at the time I'd never heard of this Goatman or any of that. But a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a Meenam for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift, and he gets among groups of people and terrorizes them. And it's supposed to be kind of like a Wendigo, and it's bad juju just to even talk about it, but it's even worse if you see it. So keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So now my cousin is going to. Goatman's gonna get us. He's gonna get in. He's gonna get us. And he's freaking out, and the girls are all terrified. And my cousins and I are just trying to figure it out, probably hoping it's just some hillbillies or some animal. Excuse me one sec. So all of a sudden, the smell goes away. Like to this day, I have not experienced anything like that. Like usually, smells fade away or they lessen, but it was there 1 second and it was not the next. So after an hour, making it around 9 or 10, we stopped long enough to stop pooping ourselves, enough to go back outside, stoke the fire again, and we just all figure it's some a-holes trying to mess with us. So we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or something crazy. Nothing else weird happened that night. And we stay another night, and for the main part of the night, nothing happens. And at about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. And as someone's finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what it was about, the smell comes back. And it is so freaking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. So I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. And I say we should get inside because this isn't right. And we should have just left at that point. But we all go back inside, and we're standing around, and my cousin keeps going on and on about how it's the Goatman, and my cousin Rooster tries to tell him to shut the hell up. And all the while, I'm just feeling something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I just can't figure it out. So we end up sitting there for a while, smell being strong, and we're terrified, all huddled up in this camper. And we end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats, so we got a total of 3 packs, and I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine, and after a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one, and he starts, grumbling about how I get 2 brats and everyone else only got 1, and I look at him like he's heckin' stupid and tell him that, listen, everybody only got 1 because there's only 12 brats, and if he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. And that's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, oh Jesus, get it out, get it out, get it out. She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin, standing up, what the hell is wrong? And me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart freaking sink. I run the frick out of the cabin, and the girls run out with us, and the trailer door is banging against the side in the trailer as everybody books it out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friend asked us what was wrong, and I start counting, and there's only 11 of us now. So I'm freaking the hell out, and I shiz you not, my cousin verified there had been 12 people in that cabin. We counted, but being that everybody didn't really know one another, and nobody had really noticed the whole time that there was an extra person, and I realized that I kind of noticed something was off. How when you're just messing around, having a good time, you don't sweat the small stuff, and you don't keep track of certain things. Well, I am dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a freaking day, eating with us. And what makes it worse is I think I could figure out which one, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with that other person, or what we would later call as the Goatman. And the girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside, and eventually we get some big sticks, and we go back to the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, there's 11 people, so we go back into the trailer, we lock the door, and we explain what happened, and the girls say that she realized it too, and that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her grabbed her leg and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. And basically we're all pretty much just scared as hell as we huddled together, and I fall asleep. I was just exhausted from all the excitement, and when I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing our stuff up. So we all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up, and some people think that we're just messing around and still want to stay at the trailers, and I just want to get the freak out of the woods. Now this girl's name was Kiera, and the one that the Goatman had touched anyway. That's what she had said. So I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she just says she just wants to go home, and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we all decide to split up. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's, so I got to lock up. So I'm super pissed at this point, because I feel like some people aren't taking this seriously, and I definitely don't want to be out in the woods for another night. So I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to just get the heck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle. He says he's going to be back. So there are just 7 of us left by about 4 p.m. And around 5 p.m. he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely antsy here, because the only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to get a gun. And it's about 5:30 p.m. or so when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kiara is outside. And okay, so we all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. And thinking to myself, if she was so heckin' scared, why would she come back? And I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Now keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell had been gone, but now I realize that I could smell just a twinge of it. So I say this to the rest of them and everybody, that these are the people that wanted to stay in the woods after we had the freaking Goatman in our midst, is laughing at me, asking if I set this up to scare them. And I'm looking at them like, listen, I'm not messing with you all right now. I asked them, why would I do something like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kiera and gets halfway to her and just stops cold. and Kiara starts heaving. I don't know how to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without making any sound, like cackling, but nothing was coming out of the mouth. And it was a fact that made me realize that there was not one sound in the whole woods where normally you just hear something. It was dead silent. And this was like in late September, so it was still pretty hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear some big geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. But to step outside the door, I tell her to come back into the trailer right now, and because I don't know what that is standing by the campfire. And she backs up into the trailer, and we lock the door. So we pull down all the shades except for one and put a guy there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so, and the guy turns to say that she's still there, and then there's a huge bang on the door, and we all just jump the fridge up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super heckin' loud, and right now my cousin's holding one of the girls, and the other two are kind of like giggling, nervous with laughter, like, oh god, what's going on? We're gonna die. And me and the other two guys we're just pooping our pants, and we hear Tan screaming, "Let me in! Let me in!" Cue that meme. So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with the rifle, and now there's nobody else outside. Evidently he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had just seen a girl. Now, mind you, he said it was not Kiara standing there when he had gotten to the edge of the clearing. She had turned down toward him with the slack-jawed look and just stared him down, and slowly tracking him as he walked the outside of the clearing towards the camp. And he said he wasn't until almost it was halfway to the trailer he had realized that she was getting closer to him, and she had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she was just turning and inching closer, and said that he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open, and when he got to the door it was locked, and he turned it, and about half the distance to the door he looks around the room and he gets super pale. And he pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, like, there are only 7 of us in here, right? And I get that feeling when your stomach drops all the way down to your, private parts. And been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, whatever it was just slipped right back in. And we all looked out the window, and there's nobody out there, so we recount everyone, and then basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everyone says 8. And I say, okay, well, how many are there now? And they all count, and they realize there are only now 7 people in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple of boxes of ammo in his rifle, and he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest, because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said there's a freaking Goatman. So he says that his cousin's supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and then in the morning they can all go back to his place, and his cousin will drive us home. And now I'm really freaking terrified, but at least I feel better because we can be an American and shoot the heck out of whatever it is, and if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared, and that I'm not funny. And he keeps telling her, listen, I'm not that kind of person. And, well, how do we know that this girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig, or if it's really the Goatman? How do we know that this is the real Tanner and that the Goatman just didn't kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we all just get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger, because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into our freaking trailer without us knowing, and mingling with us, and at worst, something bad is in that forest messing with us. So one of the girls is crying, saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her that we shouldn't, because none of us are walking through those woods right now in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is pretty much starting to go down, and it's getting a little cloudy out. So we eat something, we turn on the radio for a while, but can't really get a good station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off at about the time that Tanner's cousin shows up, and he was like 19, so I think, all right, at this point the sun is just barely over the horizon. He has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. Walks up to the trailer and whispers to Tan, asking if he's sure that his cousin, that he's his cousin, and he says yes. So the guy looks behind him all around the camp and then walks in and kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused and says, "Where's your little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. She a little slow or something?" And he also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up to the trail. And we're just like, nope. But we asked him what he's talking about, with the girl that he saw. And he said he had come down the same trail that Tanner had been using and had come up on one of these guys' buddies standing in the middle of the trail looking at him all slack-jawed. And, he had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. And she smiled at him. And he said, he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him, and she kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed any help, but she just continued to stare at him. And eventually he had been walking and turned around the bend of a trail, but when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. So he'd assumed that she had taken some sort of shortcut through the woods of the trailer, and we tell him the whole story of what's been going on, and I half expected him to say that we were just full of BS, but he just listened and sat down on the couches in the living room. Basically, Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl, and he says when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him out. So he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind, and that he smelt this nasty smell, and it kind of got stronger as he got to the camp, and eventually it got really strong, and she had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he had turned around, she had been right up on him, like nose to nose, and he stepped back from her for a little bit, and it was at this point that he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't, for him to carry her back the rest of the way if she was injured, but she just kept staring. And he said he reached out for her as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have just misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. It was very, very strange. And at this point, we all know that this is real. Unless Tanner's playing some kind of sick joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants like we are. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, we just kind of sit around until about 11. And to this day, every time I think about this, I really do pray to God that it's just some huge prank that my cousins played and just never revealed, so I would just poop my pants the rest of my life. Around 11 o'clock, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross, like blood-like smell, like cooking blood and singed hair, and Tanner and his cousin Reese get up instantly, and they grab the rifles. So now there's like this half a knocking or clawing at the door, and I tell you, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see these YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It's like mama, kind of like saying words but not really. And it says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me in." And it just made my whole body creep out, and then one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus, and it was so obviously not a person talking, and it didn't have the right cadence, and then that's something that I never realized until that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk, whether from the South, from Europe, New York, no matter what language, all people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking, and this just didn't have any type of cadence or rhythm, and the voice, something that I can't recreate. One of those YouTube cats, like whatever it sounded like, was right outside the door, and I'm in full-on terror mode. We keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Please stop messing around," and it just keeps saying, for almost about 15 minutes, and it sounded like, sorry, going on a tangent, but can't imagine how it sounded, then you can't imagine how messed up the situation was. So the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping in the woods, and every couple of minutes, it'll come back to the door and say something, and finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 a.m. right now, and Reese says, man, nope. And he opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something effective, in the name of the Lord, go away. Fires 2 more times, and then from the woods right up to against the river from the trailer, sounded like something was slowly like gibbering and hooting, like it was like answering the call. And then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman or a goat and a cat in a bag all screaming together at the same time. Like, I'd never heard anything like that in my life, and you could hear the brush over that way start to shake. And Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. So we lock the door, and we can hear this keening and screaming, and Reese says something had come out of the bushes super low to the ground and crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much that's how the rest of the night went. It was just screaming constantly for 2 hours, and we could hear stuff moving out into the tree line, but never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Now, Tanner had been sitting in that chair watching this door with his rifle, and nobody else heard or saw this. And he told me this 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. But he said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had almost been asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. Now, he just assumed it was one of us and nodded off. Now, then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. And there were 9 people in that cabin. Basically, he didn't want to try to shoot at anything in the cabin and have it kill all of us and then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we all kill ourselves. So stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. And he said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing or heave like it was laughing, but then it would just lay back down. And this story that closes pretty weak because from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tanner was a little jittery and he was avoiding looking at all of us, but we ate some breakfast. We packed up, started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and he'd bring my uncle's keys and just start walking and he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to do, but we got a little bit to the path and when he came running up, basically he just jogged back to his house. His cousin took him home. There was a window in the bathroom, and Tan had gone back to lock up and looked there, and we were too stupid to lock a screenless window. The window was messing up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up, and then getting in among us. It, walked with us all the way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking back into the woods. All this time it was from the window. We didn't even know it. And that was it. So I hope you guys had a good time with that. I definitely don't want to go to Georgia, I've been to Atlanta. Atlanta's fun, but anyway, guys, please comment, like, and subscribe. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. I love you all. Say bye-bye to Dashi. Bye-bye, Dashi. I love you guys. Goodbye. Meow, meow. My voice hurts. Meow.